welcome to Transliterature series, where we definitely celebrate literary minds and voices that shape our literary landscape and new ways of seeing the world. And I'm Neeta Aneja, and I'm your host today and founder of Transliterature series. Today's episode definitely is going to be an especially rich one. But first, if you enjoy thoughtful conversations about books, culture, ideas, please do subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that all the new episodes come to you directly. And I'm so excited about today's. So I'm really honored to have today once again Sunita Pant Bansal ji, and it's such a privilege to have her. She's the renowned author, writer, mythologist, storyteller, more than 4 decades of writing experience. She's headed various publishing houses, written, contributed, founded so many newspapers, and definitely 40 plus books. That's a big number, and such a privilege to have you today with us, Sunita ji.
It's Namaskar. It's an honor to be with you. As I said earlier, we have good conversations. So let's start the ball rolling.
Yes. So let's immediately dive in.
Yes.
We are going to discuss your latest book today, which is a comprehensive guide to Indian scriptures, until you have again come up with a book in between. But as far as I know, this is your latest book. Yeah.
Yes. This was launched in Jaipur Literature Festival this year.
Yes, yes. I was fortunate to be there. So it attempts something quite extraordinary, I must say, to everyone.
I can show the book also.
Oh, yes.
It's a beautiful cover.
Yes.
Really.
It is. It is. We designed the creative, and it was looking so nice, the book and everything. And great job. I'm sure these must have been your inputs when the final design came in. So, as I just said, that we are going to discuss this very, very important book, A Comprehensive Guide to Indian Scriptures, which definitely attempts something which is quite extraordinary because it brings together the vast ocean of Indian spiritual and philosophical texts to one approachable volume. Whether you're new to Indian scriptures or looking for a fresh perspective, I'm sure this book is going to really, really inspire you. So, what really inspired you to write this book? What was your goal? And perhaps you would like to also talk about the moment when you realized that this needed to be done with your vast experience.
Well, to tell you the truth, I've been writing specifically on mythology for the last 30 years, at least, if not more. And while one is writing, we have to do a lot of research, a lot of writing has to be done. So I had like a huge database of books, some really old books, antique ones, a lot of papers and photocopies and notes and so on and so forth. So I had a lot of material, and I knew that I had to write a book like this some point of time in life, but I wasn't really sure when. Because I always say that we don't write books, but the books get written. It's not something. I mean, this is what I have always faced. That I may plan to write a book, but it may not happen till the time is right for it. Till there is a publisher who's out there asking me to write, and then kind of things get together. It's like the complete synergy, that goes into making a book. So it was something like this, and I had the material, and I got a call from the publisher, and so he said he wanted me to write a book on the same lines. So it was pretty surreal, the conversation. And in fact, instead of answering, I think most of the time I was laughing because it was like, not laughing, but like it was something which was coming from within. It was the happiness that, yeah.
Kind of a deja vu. I mean, something that you really wanted to do.
So I said, yeah, of course. I mean, of course I'll write. And, I've been wanting to write this. So it was like this. So it was, that was the catalyst. And then, of course, I dropped everything else. I was working on 2 other projects. I dropped everything else, and I came here to Mukteshwar, in this haven of mine. And I just started, I put my notes together, put everything together to create a template, to create a structure. And I just started writing, and I just didn't stop. And it was like I would, from 5 o'clock in the morning till late at night, I just went on and on because there was so much that needed to come out. And I was personally also quite pleased with the result, as to how the whole thing shaped up. Because a book like this evolves right in front of your eyes. It's not something that you can plan arbitrarily like any other book. It evolves. So it's something like, okay, I know something like this, and I start working and I get information. The more I dig, the more information I get. And then you start filling up the gaps, and then you realize that there's a huge skeleton that's in front of you, and then you start filling it up, fleshing it out. So the whole thing evolves. So as I was working on it, I also kept on evolving myself. That's what happens with writers. I mean, at least with me, it happens. I evolve with every book I write. It's a great experience always. It's an extremely gratifying experience to see myself evolve through a book.
So
That
here,
is how it happened.
absolutely. And I think your publishers are Redomania, right? The Punk
Yes,
and everybody. And I'm sure.
Dipankar. Yes,
So it must be in such a relief that you already have a publisher, the book that you're writing. And I'm sure, I mean, with your kind of repertoire and your
it
kind
is.
of background, you don't really
But
need one. People come to you,
it,
definitely. But
it is. It's not just Redomania, but it always happens with all the books that I have written. It'll be Rupa coming to me, talking, discussing something, and then the book is out. So
hmm,
it's never been that I have something and I start hunting for publishers,
hmm,
because I don't think books happen like that. Books have to happen when something is getting created here, and there is a receiver out there. So when these two forces meet, a book is born. That is what I believe in, and I've always believed in. So I would never run after anyone to publish my book. I have lots of ideas, and invariably in conversations, things come out and they get picked up, and then I'm asked to write, and then I write, and the book is out. So
and you've had so many bestsellers like Everyday Gita, then this book that we are planning to do very shortly, the fantastic
story of sugar. Yeah,
Yashodhara, and
yeah,
about management, about Krishna, the management guru that you've
yes,
written. Such wonderful books, and I happen to have spoken to you earlier on Birsa Munda. So I'm sure
yeah.
the kind of lineage, I would say the kind of readership that you have with these kind of books, I'm sure these are amazing. But this book particularly, I mean, what do you think this book is really for? I mean, do you have any readers in mind? I know it has a vast readership. I mean, there's so many
Yes,
people.
you're right. It has a vast readership. Why? Because it's not meant for a person who's new to Hinduism. It's not meant for a person, not only meant for a person who knows Hinduism well, because I feel that it's a book for everyone. And I don't, for even a moment, believe that anyone can claim, I know everything about the scriptures, Hindu scriptures. It's possible. It's just not possible. They're too vast. They're too deep and too kind of widespread to be claiming that we know them all. So this book is like something to create awareness. So even if you're not a Hindu, this book doesn't talk about religion, first of all, because all my writing, I focus on mythology. As I said, for the last 30 years I've been focusing on mythology, but I don't talk about religion. I talk about the philosophy of mythology. I talk about the stories, and they are relatable to everyone. It's not meant for a particular religion, because people are the same, emotions are the same, the morals are the same, the values are the same, everything is the same. So this book is also not meant for any particular religion, and that's why it says Indian. It is, anyone can pick it up and read and get to understand the rich scriptural heritage that we have, our country has. And so that is the a core, you can say, reader audience for this book, everyone. Because if it goes to schools, for instance, they would get to know the basics, that okay, there are so many Vedas, so many Upanishads, and so on. It's literally like that. It's for children as well as young adults, as well as adults, as well as people who don't know scriptures, people who know scriptures, any and everyone. It has that kind of readership. That is what I'm expecting. And anyone who's read it also tells me that, oh, we didn't know that there were so many Gitas. We didn't know there were so many Ramayans. So it's something that even I was learning, as I said, as I was working on this, I was also learning. So can you imagine that, if the person who's writing the book is constantly learning, what about the readers? They would also learn something or the other. If nothing else, they'll become aware.
I'm sure a lot of educational institutes will definitely come to you for picking up this book because this is how it should
They
be.
are. Yes, they are. They are. So, one institute in Delhi has already picked up, a fair number of copies.
Hmm.
And likewise, it'll happen. It'll happen.
And how difficult was it and challenging for you? Because there's so many sacred texts, there's so many things, as as you said, that you were constantly learning while you were writing this book. So how difficult was you to really, I mean, if you could walk us through the process of putting this together, this momentous book together, when you have
This,
so much that you could have covered, and I'm sure there's so much still that you would have loved to cover.
well, I would say that, I went through a number of similar books, and more or less, I found that they're following a particular pattern, a particular timeline. So that was the crux of the matter, that I had to follow some, I had to have some semblance of a historical timeline to map the scriptures as to which ones came first and so on. But at the same time, actually, timelines are the toughest. You can't really date the Hindu scriptures accurately. So what happens is that I've kind of given an average. I followed an average timeline, which is correct, but I have not actually mentioned the years, and I've clearly indicated that this is something which is extremely controversial, because people keep, and a couple of centuries here and there, it doesn't matter, does it? So so I kind of stayed away from those things. And I mapped it on a historical timeline as to, like, the Vedas coming first, and then followed by, like, the Shruti, and followed by the Smriti, and so on. And then, of course, from those, I picked up the popular ones. Like, if I'm talking of epics, we have the Ramayana and Mahabharata, the popular ones. So this is how I picked up. I mean, I have picked up, I would say, uh, 99% of the scriptures. I wouldn't say 100%, because one never knows, you know. And I always feel that I could have made a mistake. I'm human, so I would say still 99% scriptures have been covered, but covered in the sense that I have mentioned them and given a few lines about them. So now, if you get interested in a particular topic, then of course you're free to go to the library and dig out some more material. But the idea is to inform that there are these many under any head, Upanishads, these many, things like that. So this is how I've done, like Purans. I mean, obviously I couldn't write about all the 18, so I've given paragraphs and also the important aspects. So all that has been covered. So as I keep saying, it's like a primer. It's like an introductory text. It's like that's why it's called a guide. I would not call it as an encyclopedia, because encyclopedia is a very thick book. We always, this is how we think, like, for an encyclopedia it has to be thick, and this thing is fairly slim. So it has the essence of all the Hindu scriptures. And what is lacking, as you rightly pointed out, is that I have not covered Buddhist, Jain, and Sikh scriptures,
Okay.
which are part of Indian scriptures, because the title says Indian scriptures, and I've covered Hindu. So that is what something I'm working on, and I'll be adding to it for the
Okay.
next edition. So that is something the publisher and myself, we realize, and the realization came because when it was launched at Jaipur Literature Festival, so, and it was absolutely packed house. So and there were people asking lots of questions. There was one question from a young man who said that you have mentioned Indian, but what about the rest of the Indian religions that have come from Hinduism? So that's when Dipankar and I, we looked at each other and we said, yes, to be noted. And we mentioned there that you have a point here, you have a very valid point here, and I'm going to work on it, and I'm going to add that to this book, the next edition. So I'm always open to suggestions from my readers, and because that's how the book also becomes better, and that's how we also become better as writers. I'm always open. So I would love to hear your suggestions too, in case you have any.
Sure. Sure, but this is fantastic. For those of us and many of us who haven't grown up with these texts, the idea of Indian scriptures can really be intimidating. And with a book like yours, I'm sure this will easen it up and we'll come to know about the key texts and how they are categorized and everything. But coming back to the school curriculum that we discussed, that many schools are getting interested. But do you think Indian scriptures, and that's been my point of contemplation, and I've always thought about it. Do you think Indian scripture should be made part of school curriculum in a secular way? I mean, what do you think of that?
You see, I have also been thinking a lot about it because I have studied from a Christian school,
Hmm.
and we did have a class. We did have a period. We called it moral education, but we studied Bible. I mean, we studied stories from the Bible. Let's not say Bible because we didn't really study Bible as such, but we would listen to stories, the parables from Bible. So yes, so I feel that why don't schools talk about our scriptures? Why not? I mean, it again. It's not religion. They teach us so much. They tell us how to behave in society, for instance. They tell us about dharma, for instance. Why not? So I firmly believe, and that's the reason why I've been writing on mythology so much. And I always make it a point to explain to whenever I go to schools to tell parents also and teachers also and students also that I'm not coming here to talk about religion. I'm talking about, you know, these stories that teach you so much. They teach you about relationships, how to handle relationships. There's everything in our stories. So why not? Why not? I mean, what is, at the end of the day, what is religion? Religion tells us to, lead our lives in a better way, to live harmoniously with the rest of the world. Isn't that what religion is supposed to do? So why not? I mean, why don't we talk about our own scriptures? So that's the reason I have been simplifying, Mahabharata, Ramayana, Purana, Gita, all the scriptures for children, for young adults, and they're extremely appreciated by school children, also themselves, of course, the parents and teachers as well, because the parents also don't know so much. Even in our time, what were we taught? We were not taught anything. The only thing we heard from our parents or grandparents were, snatches of Ramayana and Mahabharata, isn't it? And of course, the Ram Leela every year. What else did we hear about in terms of scriptures? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So I feel it's important that a book like this to be introduced, kept in school libraries, and to be part of, it's a heritage. It's a scriptural heritage. Why not? So I
Absolutely.
mean, I try my best to push these things, talking to teachers and talking to schools, and and whoever cares to listen, like for instance through this platform. But I hope someday, it'll happen that these things would be in school.
No, it should happen because till 12th, you're so busy in these rigorous, most routine academic syllabus and everything. And if it becomes part of it, at least they get introduced. And as you see more and more youth after 12th and more youth work in college, they are getting back to their roots and they are reading, they are getting heavily involved, which was not like it was earlier. So I think this is the right
Mhm.
time, right age to have and go back to basics. You know,
But you see, but moral education is part of curriculum.
mhm,
The curriculum has general knowledge, moral education as part of it, all schools, everywhere, across the board. So when you talk of moral education, what better source than our own scriptures? This is what I try to tell people. You're talking of moral education. You try to dig out stories from all over the place to talk about moral values. But what about our own scriptures? They're full of moral values. They're the best source. You know?
you're right about that because in colleges, I'm part of INTAC and there's so many activities connected with heritage and culture that we take up in different schools and, for example, quizzing on heritage, on culture. And I see the lacuna there that yes, if they make it part of maybe the quizzing or maybe part of a book like yours gets
Yes.
introduced, regularly, and maybe the further books that you write, as you said, that you're going to write further on maybe a Sikhism and add it on.
Yes, I'm
So,
adding.
so it becomes a very, very comprehensive thing for children to learn and at least get a basic idea. I think at this stage, this is what is really required.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I also feel that a lot of listeners are very, very new to these texts. So if someone picks up your book, for example, where do you think they should begin and what kind of journey can they expect? Perhaps you could tell a little more about the book content and maybe how they, what are they really going to read and what are they going to
You
maybe.
see, any book like this, I believe, I mean, this is my personal belief, should always, we should always read the introduction of the book, because that's where you get to know about the book, a little bit about the book and why it is written by the author. So I think introduction is important. And after that, of course, it depends. A lot of people might want to go to the, you know, Ramayana and Mahabharata, because that's the most popular one. So then, they could jump to the Itihas, as we call it, the epics, and read about Ramayana and the other interpretations of Ramayana, like Ramcharitmanas and so on, and of course the Mahabharata. But I would frankly say that a book like this, which is following a historical timeline, should be read from the beginning, because that's how you follow the timeline. Because this is not like Gita that you can just flip open the page and start reading. You can do that also, but if you really want to get the hang of the entire scriptural
Mm,
heritage, I think it'll be important. And it's a very small book, so it's not really difficult to go through the entire book right from the beginning. And it's written in a very simple language, because that's how I write, in the simplistic of terms, because for people to understand and not start looking around for dictionaries and stuff. So I would suggest that you start from the beginning, and the moment you read the introduction, you will want to read it from the beginning, because
absolutely.
then you'll also realize why you should read it from the beginning, because it's a story, it's following a timeline. So this is how this happened, and after that this happened, and how and why they came. If you suddenly jump in the middle, then you'll miss out as to why this thing actually existed, and why this book actually happened,
Mm,
things like that. But after you've read the whole book, then you'll realize certain things will catch your attention. For instance, there is this chapter in Kala Shastra, which is something extremely interesting. It talks about the Kala Shastras, where things like from seeing a small part of a person, like even from a picture, for instance, a person can draw a full human being. So that is they are called arts, but we can call it actually science, because the kind of education which was imparted then in the gurukuls of our time, the ancient times, they were not really sciences or arts and stuff like that. They were all, you can call them all of them as sciences, or you can call all of them as arts. Essentially they were one and the same. So there are a lot of these kind of uh, and there is one, for instance, and I keep talking about it, which is Samudriksha, Kala, which is where a person can talk about the past, present, and the future of the person by just looking at the face, hands, and feet. And it's a complete there's a thick book about it. It's science, and it explains, and the minutest details, like the distance between eyebrows, for instance, shape of your nose, for instance, these kind of things. They are fascinating. Shilp Shastra, for instance, the art of sculpturing. So, I mean, there are so many. And when you're reading this, you realize that there is so much in our country. And I would really want that if people get connected, if they connected, meaning, from within them, from soul connection. That's when I say connection, I mean soul connection. If they get connected, they would, at least some of them, would want to take any one topic further enough to do probably a PhD or something, and give us more information, because this is awareness. This is not the entire information. So I
mm,
would love it if that could happen. There's so many of such, like Bhavishya Puran. It talks about future. I mean, it's so interesting. It talks about Queen Victoria. It talks about everybody. It's amazing, honestly. I mean, when I'm talking about these scriptures and not just the book, but in general, I get extremely excited because I feel that there is so much yet that needs to be talked about and told to people. And my target is always the younger people. Children, yes, but 20 to 40, because that's when I feel that, people are not really adult, not children really. At the same time, they're struggling to, find the right path for themselves, to create a life for themselves. There's a lot of confusion. They don't really want to discuss stuff with peers because they feel embarrassed, and they are adult enough to not go running to their parents. So there are all kinds of confusions. So I feel that's a fantastic target group for me to address, and that's where I think books like these help, because they also show you that, okay, this is what I'm going through. So maybe the one particular book out of this seems to be, touching the course somewhere, and so maybe I should do a little bit more reading in that direction. So these are the things that actually happen to readers when they read books like these. So it's a kind of help.
Absolutely. And also the fact that how ancient wisdom really helps you out in the modern life. I think,
Oh yes.
how practical children are, they like to relate. And maybe some of the examples you'd like to give, you've already mentioned few, uh, that how maybe because there were maybe some examples from the book where these ancient ideas really resonate with modern life. The
Oh,
struggles that we go through today and the struggle that the hard times we are going through now.
you see, for that, of course, as I keep mentioning, and I've written so much about Gita, that is the best book. But here I talk about the examples I gave from Kala Shastra were because, these are sciences that are not really explored, as much. So, I mean, can you imagine a science which talks about everything about elephants or everything about horses, for instance? Can you imagine that there are books talking about these, how to choose particular animal? They're talking about flower arrangement. Can you imagine there are books talking about detailed flower arrangement, about flowers and their arrangement? So they're about gems, gemology. It's all part of this. It's all here. Everything is all here. So what I'm saying is that it's not, I cannot really give an example as to what book will, what particular scripture will help. But I would say that the moment you start reading this book, your curiosity, would help you
Mhm.
in giving you the right direction. Like, for instance, we talk about building houses, architecture. We have this entire book, Sapati Veda, about architecture. And even when you go into Ayurveda, because that's also part of this, there are books that even tell you about the detailed anatomy, physiology. They talk about the growth of the fetus right from the time of conception till birth. This is the fascination. So I'm trying to say that if you read this book, you'll find so many interesting books that you have no clue about, that are extremely fascinating. And so if you can possibly, go find those books, you'll realize how much richer your life will get, because this is what this book is all about. Because again, I don't talk about religion, so I will not talk about any religious stuff. And philosophy, as far as philosophy goes, the essence of the entire philosophy of this is in Gita. So, I mean, what can I say?
Yes.
The
Go to
essence of
every
the
decade.
entire,
Yeah.
yes, the entire philosophy of our religion, if you call it, Hinduism, is in Gita. So if you are able to understand Gita, honestly, that's the philosophy of life. That's the manual to live life. And what you will also learn by reading this book is that our our religion, Hinduism, is extremely democratic, because it says that we can worship any god of our choice. So in a family, there could be one person who's worshipping Krishna, the other could be Ganesh, the other could be Hanuman. And there is absolutely no problem, because all the paths lead to the same destination. So that is such a beautiful thing that you learn when you read this book, how democratic Hinduism is, how encompassing it is, and how vast. And it tells you that you don't even have to follow any god. That's what it says. That it's good that you're reading scriptures. It's good that you have learned so much of whatever gyan that you have received from the various scriptures. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is to use your own wisdom, and not do something that is given in a book. But use your own wisdom. That even Gita says. So that's what I'm saying. The essence of it all is in Gita. And again, this is something which has, while working on mythology, this particular aspect has also affected my thought process. That when I was working on the Purans, for instance, I discovered that, they all talk about the same thing, about how the world happened, the genealogy of kings, the origin of the universe, and so on. And they would attribute it to one god on the name of which the Puran is. So Vishnu Puran will say everything comes from Vishnu and goes back to Vishnu. Likewise, Shiv Puran, likewise Brahma, likewise, Devi. So when you see this, when you're studying Purans and you see this in front of you, what do you realize? You realize that the source is one, whatever name you may choose to give to it, So whatever God, for instance, the source remains one. So we ultimately come from one source and we go back to the same source. So, I mean, to put it very simplistically, if there is A, and which is the source, and there is this B, which is the destination, which is, again, going back to the source, there could be so many, like zillions of paths from A to B. So it really doesn't matter who's walking which path. It's your choice. So this religion, Hinduism, and which you will get to know from this book, gives you the freedom. It explains to you that you have the freedom of choice to follow any path, because the destination remains the same. We have to go back to, the source from where we have come. Whichever path, whichever God, whether you do rituals or you don't, it makes no difference. Isn't that beautiful? So that is something which you, understand, which I hope that people would understand, because that is what I understood. And that's when you realize the beauty of this religion.
I'm sure your book has come at the right time, because there's so many questions in one's mind and one wants some specific answers. But through your book, we at least come to know perhaps some questions I have in mind. Through your book, I come to know, maybe through this source, I read further. This is my
Yes.
reckoning, and I go there. At least it's there on a platter for me now. I don't have
Yes.
to Google for different sources. Sources are there now. Specifically, I have to study. But do you think
Also, you're given options, no, not just
yeah.
sources. You see, maybe you just knew about, for instance, the normal people, they know about Ramayana, Mahabharata, Gita. Some people talk about Ved Puran, very few. Some people might mention Upanishad. That's all. End of the story. That's all they know. This book gives you such a huge database. It tells you there's so many more options. Why are you stuck with only these 5, 6 things?
Yeah,
Forget all the 5, 6, 6. Get into something else. So this is what this book tells you. It gives you more options. I mean, the choice is vast.
absolutely. No, I'm sure this is, as you have rightly said, it's a comprehensive guide to Indian scriptures.
Yes.
At least it's there in front of us. But on a personal note, after spending so much of time really immersed in Indian scriptures, was there a particular teaching or story that stayed with you? I know you have everything in front of you. You've done so much for us in the sense of researching your experience of 40 years. Any particular stories that really stuck with you? I mean, which we would like after going through a book and then going through other books, having that kind of perspective, going back to your particular teaching that stayed with you, something that you would like to really talk about.
You see, the main thing, earlier I mentioned Purans. That was a huge turning point in my life, because till the time I had not studied the Purans, I was also stuck between Ramayana and Mahabharata, because these are the only two stories that we keep kind of, going to
Mm.
and keep writing and rewriting. it was only after Puranas that I realized that uh, it's just the same. All of them are just the same. All the gods are just the same. The goddesses are the same. The gods and the goddesses are the same. There's only one source. So it does no gender also. So that was something which was a huge thing for me, which changed my, course of thinking. And after doing this particular, so there's not one story. It's because you see, that stage, I guess, is gone when I would be affected by one story. Maybe, maybe, maybe 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, I would have been affected by the stories, and that is how I've written books. For instance, I was affected by the fact that Ram had to tell Sita to go through Agni Pariksha, twice. So I was affected by it. So I started digging more about Ramayana and got to the uh, basic, literally down to the basics to understand why what happened. So there were reasons why I wrote certain books because of my own personal issues with the story, which I resolved by doing the research, by reading so much, and then I wrote them in simple language so that people would also get to know what I learned, and so that people don't grow up with those issues. Like I don't want children to grow up with, thinking that Ram sent Sita again, when she was pregnant to Valmiki. So I had to find the reason for it. So once I found the reason, I explained it in my first Ramayana that I wrote with 4-year-olds. So that is how I work. Like for Buddha's wife, why did he leave her behind? Now that's a reason which propelled me into digging further and finding the reasons, the cause as to why this happened. So these are the things that drive me. These are the driving forces that make me write books. But if you say the takeaway, the takeaway from writing this book was tremendous. It it literally freed me because it tells me that Hinduism has no one founder. It has no central authority. It has no definite scripture. It has no fixed doctrine. Can you imagine how freeing this entire thing is? The moment you realize this, you suddenly feel free. And you suddenly feel that why are people fighting about? Like, what is it? I mean, then you really understand probably humans. Then you understand life. Then you begin to understand why people behave in certain ways. And then you also understand why you shouldn't behave like that. There are lots of things that are kind of corollaries from this particular understanding, because essentially you understand dharma, which is right action, and which is always right action is not never black and white. It always depends on the situation where you are at. Right action cannot be just a definitive that if this person has done something, it's not a tit for tat. It's not eye for an eye. That's not the right action. So these are the things you learn when you are working on scriptures. So for me, it was a very liberating, very freeing experience to after having done this book. It gave me freedom. It also gave me tremendous choice, to pick and choose, and then there is no guilt. All the guilt is kind of completely wiped out because you realize that what you were doing, was not okay. Because what happens is people tend to tell you that don't do this because they have heard it from somewhere. Nobody tries to find out why do this. You see, there's no people will tell you, okay, do this katha, at your place on this day. Why? Nobody will tell you. They will not, because they don't know the answer. So the moment you start reading books like this, you realize that all those things, they have no meaning. The rituals and all those things, they have no meaning. So this is something really deep. And this is something which is, I'm hoping that slowly, like, book by book, I'm able to transmit it to my readers. And I'm hoping that they realize that what they follow, the dogmas, the the fixed ideas that they have been carrying with them since generations, they have to break out of them, because they come from generations, from parents and their parents and so on, and nobody dares to question. So that is something I'm trying to get at, to help people release themselves. I can't say I would release them, but certainly these kind of books are a step in that direction, to help people release themselves from the various, the kind of cage that they have literally locked themselves up in. They have done it, So if they understand, then they would, they'll be able to release themselves, because it's only after understanding that you release yourself. It was only after understanding, after writing so much and reading so much, that I could release myself, isn't it? So I'm hoping that these books will act as triggers.
It's such a privilege to have this position of being your reader, your book's reader, because that's how we are also evolving. And your books really tell us so much. So, what are your next plans? What are you doing next so that we can eagerly wait for your amazing work more?
One is, as I'm saying, I'm adding more stuff to this. And then I'm also, I've done the usual Mahabharata, Ramayana, and all those, and I've done it. There's some new editions for children that are coming out on Ramayana, Mahabharata, and stories of Hanuman and Navdurga also for children, because that's very important for children to know about not just Navratri as Navratri, but how the Shakti evolved from, from the original Shakti to the 9 versions of her. So that's coming out soon. And I'm also working on, decoding Hanuman Chalisa, because Hanuman Chalisa is also a wonderful, book, and every line of Hanuman Chalisa means a lot. And again, I'm doing it for, I'm simplifying it for readers, for young readers, so that talking in their language, speaking in their language, like I did everyday Gita, so that they're able to, use it practically in their lives. Because all these books have a lot of practical wisdom hidden in them, and that is what I try to, kind of explore and explain to my readers. So that's an interesting one that I'm doing, and I'm also working on explaining Panchtantra. That's
Oh,
my
fantastic. That'll be so good
yeah.
for us.
That's
Yeah.
So that is explaining Panchtantra in a way that teaches you how to manage your life.
Okay.
Because Panchtantra has been reduced to bedtime stories for children, which is not the intent. The intent of Panchtantra was to educate the 3 absolutely imbecile sons of a king who didn't want to do anything with ruling the country. And that's when the Panchtantra was created by Vishnu Sharma in 5 volumes, Panchatantra, 5 Tantras, where Vishnu Sharma, through the medium of stories, explains to them, teaches them how to literally govern. So can you imagine, this is how powerful Panchatantra is, and somehow it's been reduced to bedtime stories, animal stories for children, which is totally not what it is. So I plan to bring a version of it, showing that these stories help us in our daily lives, tell us how to handle our relationships, because Panchatantra tells you that, okay, these are the 2 parts, very simplistically. You do this is the result. You do this is the result. You pick and choose. Wisdom is yours. So this is how it is. And through stories, these things are explained, because India is a country of storytellers, and all our education has been through stories. So Panchatantra was another fantastic book to work on. So yeah, these are a few of my ongoing projects. I always have plenty in my head and
I know.
lots more on my laptop. So
It's amazing how you're
yeah,
able to convert all what you have in mind, write it down, and give it to us on a platter. I mean, so much of hard work on your part, but a read on your part and it changes a life. So, any last words you'd
this
like?
is a design. This is a design. This is not nothing to do with me. I always say that I'm very grateful to the powers who create the paths, So if I've written something, it'll happen that somebody will, call me or text me or write to me and say that, we're looking for something on this and I already have it. It always is like that with me. This is not something new. Since forever it's been like this. So I always say I'm extremely lucky. I'm very grateful, that I can focus on my writing. I don't have to think about what do I do with this now that I've written. So that's I feel I'm blessed. This is a tremendous blessing. And yeah, so I continue writing and the books will continue coming.
Fantastic. And so nice to hear all this from you. Such a joy to listen to all this. But having said that, we've come to the end of our conversation, but we would still like to have your last words on this fantastic book and something about the cover as well, and something about, I mean, anything that you would like to mention for the viewers on the book that we have left out, something more
Uh,
from.
I don't think we've left out. The cover is, of course, not really completely mine because my publisher is also, they have very good team of designers. They have a fantastic team of. They have a good team per se. They have very good editors. They have very good designers as well. So, I mean, of course, there's always a back and forth as to what there is a basic design, and then there's a little change of font here and there. So it's always teamwork. But at the end, I mean, any book is teamwork and nobody can take full credit for any book at all, and also every book has its own destiny too. So even if we as writers we write a book and we you know kind of we give it out to the readers, it it's the book's destiny that takes it wherever it has to go. It can go all over the country, all over the world, or maybe it'll stay for a while in a corner and then suddenly pick up pace. So all this one needs a lot of patience, as writers, we need to have a lot of patience and we need to, you know, uh, literally do our best and let God do the rest. This is what I feel. And so as far as this book goes, uh, I mean, I don't think we've left out anything. This is uh, the idea is to make readers aware of all our foundational texts, and there are very many. And so, this is a book that I think everyone should read, and it's not difficult. And it is something, even if you leave it in the middle and pick it up after a week, it really wouldn't matter as long as you start reading it. Because when you start reading it, then you start understanding your own people better, your own country better, your own culture better, your own religion better, Hinduism better, So this is something which is imperative for everyone to read. And even for people who are not Hindus, it is again important because they will understand Hinduism better. And they will also understand that Hinduism tells you that everyone is the same. And God is just one source, and everyone comes from that one source and goes back to that source. So there is absolutely nothing to fight about. So even people belonging to other religions, when they read this book, this is what they will understand. They will realize what our religion is all about. So I think it is important that this book be read by literally everyone. Every house should have a copy. Not just the libraries. I would go as far as to say every house should have a copy. And it's not intimidating at all. It's not at all intimidating. If you start reading it, you'll realize it's nothing. It's very friendly. It's extremely friendly. And and also a very important thing. Yes, you're right. That there's one important thing that I would like to add here. This is not my opinion. People who have worked on scriptures in terms of translating them or explaining them have always added their own perspective because that's what people do. In this book, the toughest part for me was not to really put together this book, not to write this book, but to just weed out the perspectives of other people. Because obviously, I'm referring to English translations of various books, when I'm writing a paragraph, I had to be careful that I'm not putting the translator's perspective into this, because this book is pure. This is as it is. It doesn't have my opinion. It doesn't have anybody else's opinion. This is how it is. You like it, it's fine. You don't like it, that's also fine. It has nobody's opinion in it. That was something which was difficult, because the moment you start doing your research, you find books, you invariably find that these things creep in people, their own versions, because everyone has their own perspective from from wherever they come and whatever their background is, education background, whatever. There's plenty of reasons, plenty of things that go into making a perspective. That's what I did for Gita also. I read so many of them to get the essence out, because if I had read, say, just five, I would be having five perspectives. So I had to read many more to understand that this is the essence, and these are so many hundreds of interpretations or understandings of this essence. So that thing I had to remove, literally, uh, delete from wherever. So this is an important aspect of this book, that this is clear, this is as it is, with nothing, no dilution in terms of my opinion or anybody else's opinion. So you you have the freedom to make your own opinion after reading this book. This is how I've written this. So the reader has the opinion to decide that certain if they read this, they don't particularly like one Veda or one Upanishad, they say if we don't like it, that's fine. That's their opinion. But I'll just tell you that, okay, this book has this. I have not written it. The book has it. It's like, when you tell stories, you can, you can talk about a particular villain and say that, okay, this is how he was. I mean, for instance, I'll give you a basic example of Ramayana. You talk about Ravan, this is what he did. No, it's up to you to love or hate him. No, it's up to you to say, okay, he was terrible. This is what he did. That's your perspective. But somebody might say, oh my God, he was so gyani. He knew, all the scriptures. He was, he was a Brahmin. He was so learned, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the same. Ravan is the same. Same. The reader decides that they want to like this person or they don't want to like this person, isn't it? So what happens is interpretations get colored many times, not many times, all the times. Interpretations would get colored because the writer would have their own opinion, that because they didn't like it, they didn't like what he did to, say, Sita or whoever, or maybe his own wife. So they would add that little bit. This book is not like this. This is clear. This is how things are. So you make your own opinion. And that's actually, most of the time, that's how I write also. Because I want people to have their own opinions. I just tell them, what I know of the story. So I give all sides, of a person. I never say a person is very good and a person is very bad. I always say that everyone has good and bad. Everyone has, shades of gray. Nobody's pure white. Nobody's pure black. I mean, there's always something or the other which is, lacking. So that's how I write in any case. So, but in this case, it was difficult because so many people, there were so many references that I had to go through, and they would have their own opinions, their own analysis, because they would be analyzing it. So that was the tough part. That was the only tough part, actually.
My God, good that you answered this, because one of the questions that I missed was asking you this only, that how do you think it must be so challenging, because it has so many perspectives, interpretations,
Yes.
and viewpoints, and getting it all together must definitely be the most challenging part. And you've read
Oh,
it.
yes.
So
Yeah, that was the only challenging part, actually. It was really challenging.
I can understand, and you've talked about it so frankly and very right. And at the same time, I was thinking that your book had such a fantastic launch at JLF Jaipur, and a lot of people responded it so well and asked such relevant questions. And I was also thinking about JLF London coming up. And I'm sure, I hope you can carry this book there, because there's so much of Indian diaspora there. And when I talk to them, because I travel to London so often, that this is the kind of things that they talk about. I mean, they talk about Indian scriptures, they talk about so much, and they're so fond of this. And your book, I'm sure, if carried to JLF London, and people talk about it and people read about it. This is definitely the need of the Indian diaspora there or anywhere in the world, that the youth there wants to know, and they need answers.
That has been the need forever, actually, as far
Yeah.
as Indian diaspora is concerned. In fact, I founded two magazines, one for England, one for a client in London, that was called Hindu Today, and one for an American NRI client called Tathastu for the US market, for the Indian diaspora there. And again, answering these kind of questions, the magazines were on basically body, mind, soul, and so that this has been something which is ongoing. They feel the need to, because there's so many questions they have, and they need answers to. So yes, and that's the reason why my books do very well abroad. I have a good base of readers, and that's also the reason why I write in very simple language and very relatable language, giving examples from actually the current scenario. I give examples so that they are able to relate. Because knowing that they cannot see what we are seeing here, they're living in a totally different environment. It's important to talk to them in their language. So that is why my books do well abroad. So I'm sure this will. I'm sure this will do well as well.
And with such
Because
multiple bookshops there, it'll be lovely to see your fantastic book lined up with the Indian sections that they have there. It's always a privilege to find your books there. But Sunita ji, thank you so much for taking us on your journey. I mean, and for making the scriptures feel accessible, I would say, rather than distant. And your book is a real service for anyone who's looking to connect with the roots of Indian philosophy and storytelling. For our listeners, I really recommend a comprehensive guide to Indian scriptures. It's a thoughtful, approachable entry point into a rich and very, very complex tradition. Thank you, Sunita ji.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
such
you
a
so much
lovely.
for having me, and also for explaining what this book is all about in such a simple way to viewers, because it's very important to touch them. And the simpler it is, the more effective it is.
So right. And thank
So
you.
it
Thank
was
you, everyone, for joining in today. And if you've
a
enjoyed
pleasure.
this conversation, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon and share this episode with anyone, I'm sure, who would love to, who enjoys such conversation, and especially of today, when we have had such a rich, I would say, dialogues with Sunita ji. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. A pleasure, totally.